Hello and welcome into Live from the Plains. My name is Daniel Locke. This guy is Logan Fowler, and we are just, as this is coming out, just over 24 hours away from kickoff between the Auburn Tigers and the number 5 Georgia Bulldogs.
We are. It's going to. Well, I'm not going to say that. Yep, we are 24 hours away almost. That's all I'll say. We'll get into the details later.
Just about ready to get into the car and head over to Athens with you. We'll have complete coverage all weekend long. Really looking forward to that. Going to be a good trip over there. I imagine a lot of country music's going to be played on the way. The 6-hour round trip we have in the car.
Yeah, we got to do something to keep us awake.
Absolutely, that's a boring drive.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, my day's been pretty good. I didn't have my 8 a.m. I went to my 9:30. Then I went to my 11. Then I got some lunch, chilled at the house for a little bit. Went to the library and knocked out all the schoolwork I had to get done before the end of the weekend, and wrote a few articles. It's been a pretty productive day. Then went over and watched Auburn basketball practice. So I'm feeling pretty good. What about you?
I was feeling good until about 7 o'clock when my intramural softball team lost in the third round of the playoffs. So if I seem a little sad right now, that's it's just because I'm dealing with that loss. No, I'm just kidding. That was a good day. Good day. Also, very productive day here. So
Look at us being productive.
yeah,
It's quite an inspiration to people who haven't been productive because they want to be like us. We know how much everyone who listens to the show looks up to us.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's pick'em time. It's been good to me this week and this season. You not so much. After week 5, I sit at 51-9, and Logan sits at 48-12.
It's not good.
No. But this could be the week that you bounce back.
It could be. I might have to do something different than you this week.
Yeah, we have one different game, so there will be some movement one way or the other.
I'm gonna have to. Well, maybe I'm gonna surprise you right here and switch something up on you.
All right, well, let's get right into it and see if that happens. To kick off the SEC slate for Week 6, the number 9 Missouri Tigers will hit the road to take on the number 25 Texas A&M Aggies. Kickoffs at 11 a.m. Central Time, ABC, ESPN Plus game. I'm going Missouri.
I'm gonna go Missouri too. That's low key a tricky one though. I mean, it's in College Station. Obviously, we saw a couple weeks ago that Missouri is, they can be beaten. They're taking 2 overtimes by Vanderbilt, but yet again, I just think that Brady Cook, Luther Burden, and that Missouri offense probably just has a little bit too much firepower. So I'm going to go with Missouri, but I'm not super confident.
We're going to go out of order here, skipping the second game of the day, which is Auburn, Georgia. That brings us to the third game of the day. The number 12 Ole Miss Rebels hit the road to take on the South Carolina Gamecocks. This is a 2:30 p.m. Central kickoff on ESPN. I'm going with a bounce back win for Ole Miss.
Man, is Sellers healthy yet, or is Ashford?
I think so.
Is he's healthy? Man, that's another tough one, dude. I really want to pick Ole Miss, but I am still going to go Ole Miss.
There you go.
Going Ole Miss.
So probably – sorry, were you done? My bad.
I mean, that's just a tough one. That's really –
yeah.
That's going to be an electric atmosphere if I had to guess. We kind of did see – Given didn't really have Ole Miss prepared last week. They weren't very their first real game with some real competition. Obviously, they showed their weaknesses. I think I agree with you, though. I think it's going to be a bounce-back win for Ole Miss.
Yeah. So, moving into what's most likely going to be the least competitive game of the SEC slate this week, 3:15 p.m. Central Time on the SEC Network. The number 1 Alabama Crimson Tide, coming off a big win over the Georgia Bulldogs at home last week, head up to Nashville to take on the Vanderbilt Commodores. a team that Auburn will play later this season. So I yeah, I'm going with Alabama here.
Give me Diego Pavia. I'm just kidding.
I was
Alabama.
about to say, wow.
No, I'm just kidding. Not there yet. Um, yeah, no, Alabama by a landslide.
What would it mean for Kalen DeBoer if Alabama lost this game? Because as you said before we started recording, that completely undoes what happened a week ago.
Yeah, I mean that's a bad loss, but the percentages of or the chances of that happening are very very low. So
I think there's a better chance of Auburn
I
winning
mean
than
they
they.
could, yeah, I mean they could come out flat. Have a rough go in the first half after that emotional win last week. You could see something like that, but
I
ultimately,
could see Vanderbilt keeping it close for a little bit, just because I really believe that this Vanderbilt team is improved.
yeah, they're a scrappy
Um,
bunch.
yeah, but no.
No, no.
Um, Another intriguing game here that might not look intriguing at first glance, but I think will end up being a good game. The number or 6:30 p.m. Central Time on ABC and ESPN Plus. The number 4 Tennessee Volunteers go on the road to take on the Arkansas Razorbacks. Arkansas coming off that loss to Texas A&M at Jerry World a week ago, but a chance to bounce back on their home turf against a team that I really think is one of the best in the country. I'm going to pick Tennessee, but this is the pick I'm making this or other than this is the pick I'm making this week that I'm the second least confident in, if that sentence was coherent.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna go Tennessee too. They're hot. They're playing very well. Um, Arkansas, they're not a not a they're just not that good. So I'm gonna go with Tennessee. I probably don't think it's gonna be as close of a game as you do. I mean, I could see where you think it could be a trap game for Tennessee, maybe, but um, yeah, I think Tennessee wins this one pretty big.
It's valid. Moving on to the final SEC game of the week chronologically, not the last one we're going to talk about, obviously, because we haven't gotten into Auburn, Georgia yet. But 6:45 p.m. Central Time on the SEC Network. This is one that I think we're going to listen to in the car on the way back. Excuse me first. I talk.
So it looks like Daniel is having a bit of a problem there, sneezing and coughing, but I would keep this going, but I'm not quite sure what game we've got going on.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So you'll
Maybe I could have held out a little longer to tell you the game. 6:45 p.m. Central Time, SEC Network. The UCF Knights taking on the Florida Gators in the Swamp. Gus Malzahn versus Billy Napier, and one that is another battle for bragging rights in the state of Florida. The state of college football in the state of Florida right now is nothing short of hilarious because Mario Cristobal and Gus Malzahn are I think definitely the top two coaches in Florida right now
yeah.
because Billy Napier has never had it to begin with since getting to Florida. And then Mike Norvell, who looked like a top 5 coach all of last year, has just I don't put much of the blame for FSU's struggles this year on him, but he definitely hasn't been as good as last year.
Yeah, I mean, it's football in Florida has been pretty bad for well, I mean, obviously Miami and UCF, but UCF's coming off that bad loss last week to Colorado. Colorado comes into Orlando and takes down the UCF Knights. I didn't get to watch that game, so I don't really know what UCF was struggling with. Um, Florida's coming off a bye. They've had some time to prepare for this one. How much is that going to play a factor? Who knows? Because they just seem to be a bad football team. Um, not going to be a super lopsided home advantage. You'd think for Florida over UCF in this one. I mean, so um, Man, this is a tough one, dude. I'm gonna. I really want to pick Florida, and I'm gonna stick with Florida. I'm gonna stick with Florida.
I don't know if I said it or not, but I'm going UCF.
All right. Well, I'm going Florida then. So we'll have a little bit of shake up here then in the picks.
Yeah.
That's the only reason I'm sticking with Florida right now, as confident as I am.
Okay. There you have it. There you have it. So the last SEC game, goodness, I can't talk today, of the week, not chronologically, but the last one that we haven't discussed yet. The Auburn Tigers leave the friendly confines of Jordan-Hare Stadium for the first time this season to go over to Athens, Georgia, to take on the number 5 Georgia Bulldogs inside Sanford Stadium. That is a 2:30 p.m. Central Time kickoff on ABC and ESPN Plus. Now, what I thought the perfect scenario for Auburn heading into this game would be, this is, during the summer, way before the season started, is Auburn opens up 5-0, is a top 15, if not a top 10 team in the country, with a win over a ranked Oklahoma team, convincing wins over Arkansas and Cal, and absolutely blowing Alabama A&M and New Mexico out of the water. You go on 5-0. Georgia comes into this game 4-1, like I thought they would be. That one lost to Alabama, and I thought that would be the ideal. Actually, no, I think the most ideal way for Auburn to come into this game, as far as what kind of Georgia team they would be facing, is a Georgia team who just picked up a hard fought, gritty, tiring, emotional win last week. That's what I feel like would be the most vulnerable Georgia team this week. But I think now, like, their first regular season loss since 2020, like coming against Alabama, who, if you ask any Georgia fan right now who they consider their biggest rival, it's Alabama. It's not Georgia Tech or Auburn. Um, I'm sorry, it's allergy season. But yeah, um, so because Georgia lost, I wasn't going to pick Auburn to begin with, even if they were 5-0 coming into this game. But since Georgia's going to be pissed off this week, I'm definitely not picking Auburn. So I'm picking Georgia. But with that being said, I do like the line is currently 22.5. I don't think Auburn loses by 23 points. So I think Auburn covers. Um, I think Auburn will be within striking distance at halftime, but that's about as much of a prediction as I'm going to make on that front, other than I think Georgia wins the football game. But I think that it will be competitive for a little while at least. What do you think?
Um, yeah, I mean, kind of like you said, I think that Georgia's going to come in there, hitting on all cylinders. It's homecoming there in Athens, which is just crazy that Auburn is the homecoming game there this season. But yeah, I mean, I think they're going to come out hot straight out of the gate. Auburn, I think the biggest thing to look for in this game is obviously how both teams respond to pretty emotional losses last week. Georgia and Alabama came down to the wire. Auburn had the game all but won until the late pick six with 4.5 minutes left in the game. So, yeah, I mean, I think Georgia comes out hot. I think that Auburn, can they build off of probably their most complete performance of the season? Um, I have no idea because I just literally I don't know what to expect really from this Auburn team. Um, you know, it's this is obviously going to be their most their this is going to be their toughest battle yet thus far. I mean, obviously
Yeah.
Oklahoma had playmakers all over the defense. Hugh Freeze said that was basically an NFL defense the other day. So, obviously they've seen some tough, defensive, um, game plans from their opponents this year. But there's just too much talent on this Georgia team for me to think that Auburn can go in there and even have a chance at an upset. Um, Auburn hasn't won in Athens since 2005, so And, I was actually listening to Dan Peck and Bill Cameron on the radio yesterday, and they were saying, unless the SEC goes to a 9-game conference schedule in 2026, we have no idea when the next time that Auburn will get a chance to even play in Athens. So um,
Wow,
that's
I didn't know that.
yeah, that's. I mean, it looks like they're going to go to that 9-team conference slate come 2026. It's pretty much all but announced, I think. Um, but that's pretty interesting. Uh, Game wise, obviously Auburn's been plagued by turnovers. That's no, you know, mystery. They've lost every game because of the 15 turnovers that they've had. They cut them down last week. Obviously, the one that they had was extremely crucial. Um, I think that Auburn is probably going to get back to 2 or 3 turnovers this week. I personally don't think that Auburn's going to build off of that performance from last week. Um, but you know, it's a tough one. Like we've mentioned before, this offense at Auburn is just weird, man. It's just so weird because Auburn's 8th in the nation in yards per play. I mean, no trouble moving the ball down the field. Keandre Lambert Smith has been electric for Auburn so far. Peyton Thorne had a good game last week. I mean, despite the Cal game, but Peyton Thorne's had a pretty good year. Um, but at the same time, I mean, the points are just not there. So definitely not confident in Auburn to come out hot. So I mean, defensively for Auburn, Carson Beck had the 4 turnovers last week. He threw for like 438 yards, I think it was 439, something like that. Aired the ball out 50 times. That was the most that Kirby Smart has thrown the ball in his time as Georgia head coach. But Alabama had Carson Beck rattled last week. Um, Obviously, the game-sealing interception there at the end. So Auburn's only forced 4 turnovers this year. Can they do it on Saturday? I think that's a pretty big question for the Auburn defense. They're going to have to if they want any chance of an upset. I'm sorry, I'm kind of talking here, but secondary's obviously been the biggest glaring issue for that defense. I think you'd say when Champ Anthony went down a couple weeks ago, that room takes a big hit. Georgia's got playmakers out there on the outside, so I think that as you see Auburn I think we talked about it on the show on Sunday. As you see teams like Georgia, Missouri, teams that are probably a tier up from what you've seen so far offensively. I think that secondary is just they're going to have to put up or shut up. So I don't see them. I think that Georgia's going to come out there and probably have their way with it.
Yeah. So with that, I'm really sorry, but like I said, it's allergy season. And there's only so much I can do. With that being said, let's go ahead and get into kind of some questions here. You can give your answer, and then I'll give mine to these. But number one, what would it take? What would have to happen for Auburn to somehow get this done?
No turnovers. I mean, you cannot turn the ball over. And obviously, like I just said, they haven't done that in a single game this year. So no turnovers. You got to come out firing on offense. You can't waste any possessions. No 3-and-outs. No moving backwards. No stupid penalties. I mean, you've pretty much got to play a near perfect game this weekend for a chance at an upset. And then also, Hugh Freeze talked about Monday. He had a couple of regrets. Talking about play calling and then the loss to Oklahoma. Hugh Freeze can't have any regrets come Sunday, watching the film in this one. He's got to be on his A game.
Yeah. That's one thing I was going to touch on is the coaching has to be flawless. No turnovers and 30 points is kind of what I think it would come down to for Auburn to have a shot at getting it done. Or not to just have a shot. I could see a world where Auburn has a shot at winning this by scoring 20. I really can. But to really feel good about their chances, I think Auburn needs to put up 30. And like I said, no turnovers. I'll touch on what you said. No stupid penalties, no PIs. You've got to think there's going to be a false start or two. It's going to be loud in there,
Yeah.
but they hopefully Auburn's gone into the indoor this week and just cranked up the noise and worked on hand signals. But yeah, like I said, I wouldn't be shocked if there's a false start or two. No holding. Like that will be the biggest killer for Auburn. I think offensively will be holding, other than turnovers potentially. I think it really could be holding penalties because those are just devastating. Like that's a 10-yard penalty. 5 you can come back from. 10 it's hard.
Yeah, especially after a big play.
Sure, like that just kills the momentum that you would get from that. So yeah, you need disciplined O-line play. And I think Auburn has the receiver room to compete with Georgia's secondary.
Yeah.
Because this Georgia team just isn't what the last few have been. That's not to say they aren't great and one of the best teams in college football, but and I know it was Alabama, who now has a case to be the best team in the country, who beat them, but they aren't invincible. And maybe that there's some things that Hugh Freeze can take from that game. Some Georgia weaknesses, if such a thing exists. But yeah, so that's my thoughts there. Moving into the next question, what are the odds that Georgia goes down 28-0 for the second week in a row?
Not a chance.
Yeah, no, that's just kind of a laughs and giggles kind of thing.
Auburn won't score 28 points in the entire game, so
Probably not.
So yeah.
All right, next. Which individual player on Georgia's offense needs to be contained the most for Auburn to really have a shot here? Is it Carson Beck? Is it ETN? Who do you think that would be? Probably Carson Beck is where I'm going to go.
Yeah, I think that Auburn can do a fine job in the run game, stopping the run. They've been pretty decent against the run this far. Carson Beck's not going to kill you with his legs like Hawkins Jr. last week or Taylor Green against Arkansas. He can still run, but he's not going to kill you with his legs. I'm going to go with Carson Beck, but I also think, like I said, with the secondary being such a weakness right now, some of those playmakers on the outside, and I'm losing his first name right now, but Bell, who had the big play at the very end of the game last week.
Dylan Bell?
Yeah. I think that he's probably, I don't know what statistics show, but he's probably, one of Beck's go-to targets. So
yeah.
I'm gonna say that him. He, that receiver room as a whole really just needs to be.
Yeah, and that kind of brings me in the next thing I was going to talk about here is looking at the stats. Unlike Auburn, who Keandre Lambert-Smith has been the clear number one guy this year, Georgia's receiver room has really been by committee.
Mm-hmm.
Aaron Smith leads the team in yards. He has 274 yards off 17 catches and 2 touchdowns. Dominic Levet is about 58. Is my math right? No. Can't do math. Whatever. 60 yards. Dominic Levet is 60 yards behind him, having 214 yards off 18 catches and a touchdown. Dylan Bell is right on Levet's heels, 198 yards and 2 touchdowns off of 14 catches. And tight end Lawson Lucky's right there as well. 100, not right there. He's pretty far back from Bell, but 102 yards and 2 touchdowns off 6 catches. Then there's another receiver who is 98 yards. That is Colby Young. And then London Humphreys has 63. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You have 6 guys with over 50 receiving yards so far this season. Compare that to Auburn, who, Keandre Lambert-Smith has been the clear number one. Malcolm Simmons, Cam Coleman are up there, but
Yeah, I mean,
okay.
it's Auburn.
Auburn's done a better job of spreading the ball around on offense than I kind of thought. Keandre Lambert Smith, like I said, he leads the way by 200 yards, literally. It's him, and then with 415, then you have Malcolm Simmons, who has 214. But the crazy thing to me about that is take a guess at how many receptions Keandre Lambert Smith has on the year.
It's funny because I was looking at his stats earlier today, writing a story. Receptions. I'm gonna go. I know he has six touchdowns, so
Yes.
we're gonna go with 25 receptions.
17.
And Malcolm Simmons is probably at most. I'm gonna go with 10.
14.
Really?
Yeah,
Well, some of those tall sweeps that they do, I guess those count too.
that's a good point. But anyway, 3 receptions separate Lambert Smith and Simmons, yet they're separated by over 200 yards and 4 touchdowns. Like, that's crazy. Keandre is averaging 24.4 catch, Simmons 15.3. And then another thing, Cam Coleman's caught 9 passes this year for 212 yards. So he's only slightly behind Simmons in yards, 1 touchdown. But if you had told me heading into Georgia week that Cam Coleman only had 9 catches on the year, my instant thought is, okay, something happened, he got hurt, which is kind of true.
Yeah, he did. He didn't even play in the New Mexico game, so
Right, but still, even without that,
he's
like I
also
was expecting Coleman to easily have 20 catches by now.
yeah. I mean,
Easily.
Glenn Coleman has had some struggles this year too. I mean, he's had 2 or 3 balls where they've hit him right in the hands, and he's dropped it. And most of them have been deflections into, or I think 1 or 2. I know one. I want to say 2 have gone straight into a defender's hands for a pick.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, but I thought that Coleman would be, getting 8 to 10 catches a game is kind of what I thought heading into this year.
yeah,
And I think Auburn knew that Keandre Lambert Smith was going to make an impact, but I don't think Hugh Freeze and Derek Nix and who's the receivers coach? Marcus Davis. I don't think they thought that they were going to get this out of him.
yeah, he's been
Which I think if you were to talk about the most pleasant surprises for Auburn so far this year, just a little spoiler / shameless plug. This is a bye week story I'm going to do is what are the biggest surprises for Auburn so far this year, and then what are the biggest disappointments. So those will come out probably like one Tuesday, one Wednesday, something like that. So yeah, check us out. Auburn on SI. Always got to plug yourself. That sounds bad out of context. But yeah, Keandre's been great, and not many people on the Tigers can really say that they've been great this year, but he's well on pace to have a lot of yards this year, which leads me to my next question. Auburn hasn't had a receiver cross the 1,000-yard threshold since Ronnie Daniels in 1999. Does Keandre Lambert Smith do it? He is nearing halfway there. He's about 41.5. Yeah, exactly. He is 41.5% of the way there, heading into the 6th game of the year. So almost halfway there, almost halfway through the season. He's on pace for it, certainly.
yeah, yeah. I mean, as crazy as this is probably going to sound, I'm going to go with no.
Okay.
I just think that the competition that you're about to start seeing, you're going on the road for the whole month of October. Like I said, you're about to start playing some tougher competition. Which I'm not saying that he doesn't fare well against tough competition. I mean, he had a day the other day against Oklahoma. So,
Yeah,
but there's a lot of underlying factors. Somebody has to get him the ball.
true.
So I'm going to go with no. I could definitely see him hitting like the 850 to 900 mark, getting really close. I don't think he's going to have 1,000.
Yeah, I'm going to say yes, but I don't know. to keep on pace, he would need 85 yards this week, which isn't impossible. He's averaging 24.4 catch. So if
Right.
you go by that, he only needs 4 catches.
Yeah, I mean,
But like you were kind of saying, I just don't really think that that's a sustainable pace.
yeah, you go back to, I mean, Auburn's pretty much had every game they've played this year. Like I said, offensively, they're one of the best, the most explosive in the country. Last year, there were 9 games where I'd have to go back and check. It's been a couple weeks since I restated this, but multiple games where they didn't even hit 100 or barely hit 100 yards
Yeah.
through the air. So I think that this offense is probably bound to have some of those games here just eventually. I really sound like a Debbie Downer for Auburn and their offense. I just don't see them going out and throwing for 300 plus yards every game from here on out.
Yeah. But while we're kind of on the same subject, Jarquez Hunter already has 437 yards this year. I know Tank Bigsby rushed for 1,000 yards in 2021. But does Jarquez get there in 2024? He is 43.7% of the way there, nearly halfway through the season. So to remain on pace, he would need 63 yards this week. He's averaging 6.7 a carry. So I think Jarquez gets to 1,000 yards this year.
I'm going to go with yes, but at the same time, they've got to give him the ball. I mean, I feel
Right.
like we've barely even seen Jarquez this year, to be honest with you.
Yeah. 65 carries.
I mean,
I
yeah,
kind of assumed that Jarquez was going to be getting 20 to 25 a game this year.
that's what I'm saying. He had one game this year so far with 20 carries, and he rushed for 150 plus. So
And that was a career high for
right,
carries for him.
right, and I just don't really understand. I kind of wrote about this last week. Why Hugh Freeze and Auburn's offense kind of shies away from the run game when it seems to work so well for them. I mean, if it were me, man, now I'm not a college football coach, obviously, but like, and I
Really?
get,
I couldn't tell.
yeah,
Pretty sure they're playing with it.
they run the RPO offense, so obviously there's a pass attached to every run play called, pretty much. I mean, for the most part, um, I just, I mean, it's the run game seems to work for him. Jarquez Hunter feeding him the rock seems to really work for him. Damari Alston's looked good this year, so I get they're trying to spread out touches, but I would uh I would like to see Jarquez Hunter get the ball a little bit more as they move forward.
I would too. Because against Georgia, he had 17 carries. Or, sorry, not Georgia. Against Oklahoma, he had 17 carries and almost broke 100 yards.
You
So
gotta
if he got 97,
Yeah, you gotta think if they give him the ball 3 or 4 more times in that game, they probably win.
I
I
think
mean,
so too.
I really do.
Especially on that one particular
Yeah,
play that Peyton
probably
Thorne
why
threw
I'm
a pick
saying
six on.
that. Yeah, that's probably why I'm saying that. But
Just a side note, did you see where he went on whatever show that was and said that he would make that same, or I'm paraphrasing, but he said make that same decision 10 out of 10 times?
mhm.
I'm sorry. I know I'm not an SEC quarterback, but that's wrong.
Yeah, I didn't
That's
watch it, but
wrong.
I saw some of the comments that were like he kind of defended it, so I didn't watch it, but I do know what you're talking about.
I've played enough college. I've played enough EA Sports 25 to know how to chew a clock.
Well, I mean, at the same time, dude, you can't like it was an empty set. Peyton Thorne's running unless it's a draw play. Peyton Thorne's throwing it every time on that, and that's
Right,
where it
which
goes
is
back
an
to
insanely
coaching.
bad play call.
Right, that's where it goes back to coaching. Why in the world is he even in the situation to be able to throw a pick? You know you've had struggling quarterback play all season. You know your quarterbacks are bound to throw a pick. I mean, they're prone to interceptions. Why, with 4 minutes left on the clock, you need a first down 3 or 4 yards? You're near midfield. Your defense has played good. You could go for 4 yards in 2 plays or run the ball. If you don't get the first down, run the clock all the way down. You punt the ball, you pin them deep. Your defense has had them bottled up this whole time. I mean, I just kind of went off on a little rant, but
No,
that's
I
just
mean, it's a
it's
valid
true.
thing to talk about. And is this, I can never keep track. Is this a point where we know who's calling the plays or not?
You've got Freeze calling some, you've got Nick's calling some. I don't think that you hear Freeze in his press conferences will say, "Well, Nick's had a great game plan." Then you'll hear him say, "Well, I regret calling that." So I don't know, dude.
That's one thing that's really stuck out to me since I've been covering Auburn football, which I didn't cover every game in 2022, but I really picked up towards the end of 2022 is when I started covering Auburn football with any regularity. And one thing that stood out to me this whole time is it has never been clear who's calling the plays.
Yeah,
Harson wouldn't tell you unless he was throwing someone under the bus, but
yeah,
those were just bad to begin with. But that's another story for another time. And then Freeze and Philip Montgomery last year, you could just kind of tell when Freeze was calling plays last year because just about anything that Philip Montgomery called, it just felt like it was dead on arrival. And he just made his share of boneheaded decisions. Um,
something that's been a problem. Sorry to interrupt you if you want to
you're
keep going.
fine.
Something that's been a problem since I've been watching Auburn football, like you just said, Freeze and Montgomery, Harson and Bobo. Um, Last year, the two mix of the schemes on offense didn't work out. That was kind of an excuse for Hugh Freeze last year and obviously they went out and fired Montgomery. Go all the way back to Malzahn. Um, I mean, pretty much every year except for like his early 2013, 14, 15 years, he was back and forth. I'm calling plays. Just kidding. My offensive coordinator is going to call plays. 2017, he starts off calling plays. Auburn looks rough offensively. He hands it over to Chip Lindsey. Chip Lindsey and that Auburn offense light the world on fire that year. So going back to pretty much every year of Auburn football that I can remember watching, there's been controversy on who's calling the plays.
Yeah. And I can't help but wonder if that is a contributing factor to the turnover rate of Auburn's offensive coordinator position looking just like the turnover rate for the Defense Against the Dark Arts professor at Hogwarts. Because it's about the same.
Yeah.
When's the last time the same guy has been Auburn's offensive coordinator back to back years? You got to look back at least Kenny Dillingham. And I don't even think it was him. Was it
15.
Chip Lindsey?
No, Chip Lindsey was here 1 year.
That was 2017.
17. You go back to
2018, I don't know who it was. I know it was Kenny Dillingham in
who was
2019.
here. Who was here? And you got to go back to Lashley, Rhett Lashley. I
When
think
was
he
that?
was 2 years. Was he not? 16 and
I don't know.
I don't know, man. You'd have to go back and look.
These are Jason Caldwell questions. He would know.
Yeah, he would. Off the top
He
of
would
his
be able to
head.
tell us where those guys' favorite restaurants in Auburn were.
Yeah.
Love Jason. Jason's a good guy. Yeah. So I don't know, but like we were saying earlier, whatever the hell is going on with the game plan and the play calling, it's got to be good this week. It's got to be better than good. It's got to be great, or Auburn is going to get run off the field.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, kind of another question. This isn't one I planned on. This one just popped in my head. How much longer is it okay for Hugh Freeze to ask Auburn fans to just put up with going into a game like this to where it's your second biggest rival on the road and you don't even have a chance? Because I can't remember the last time that Auburn went on the road to take on Georgia or Alabama and people legitimately thought that they had a chance. Probably 2016 for Georgia and 14 for Bama is what I would guess.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a long time. I mean,
Maybe
yeah,
2018 for Georgia.
kind
I
of
don't
like
really remember that game.
it's kind of like you said earlier in the show. And now my mind is blanking, but I'll just move on. This, it used to be Oh, Georgia's biggest rival used to be, Auburn, Georgia Tech. This used to be a pretty big rivalry. It's obviously called the Deep South's oldest rivalry. Um, it's no longer a rivalry for Georgia. I mean, this game hasn't been competitive since 2000 and well, I mean, it was competitive last year. Actually, don't let that slip my mind. Auburn had that game won until Brock Bowers took over with 2 minutes left in the game.
Yeah.
But that's also in Jordan-Hare Stadium. Um,
That's a loss that I don't put on Hugh Freeze.
yeah, well, I mean, that was just a outstanding performance there in the final moments.
Yes, and
Like,
that is the one time where I'm willing to accept his "we got out talented" excuse.
mhm. Yeah, and also, I mean, Jalen Simpson goes down prior to that sequence of plays happening,
True.
um, and I mean, had Bowers contained all game. Um, so if Jalen Simpson's healthy, does Auburn win that game? Who knows? But yeah, that was a tough one.
Yep.
Back to your point though, I mean, this game hasn't been competitive for a while. The rate things are going doesn't look like it'll be competitive again for a couple of years.
I wonder if what was Georgia's or not Georgia? What was Tennessee's losing streak to Alabama prior to 2022? Was that 16?
Yeah, you got to go back a while.
I think it was 16 because 2006 to 2022, like that's 16 years.
Yeah.
This one is at the 2017 SEC Championship game, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. So Georgia's at 7. They've won 18 of the last 23 matchups. They have about a 10-game lead in the all-time series. I was looking at it earlier today when I was writing something. But yeah, and since Auburn won in 2017 at Jordan-Hare Stadium, how many of those games have even been competitive? I don't remember 2018. How did that go?
I don't even remember the score off the top of my head.
Close.
Did they? Um, Obviously, you got last year's was competitive. There hasn't been a competitive game in Athens in quite some time.
So since Auburn's last win, 2019 was competitive and 2023 was competitive. 2021 was a blowout. 2022 was a blowout. 2020 was a blowout.
All of
2018, I don't know.
2019
sure it was
was in Jordan-Hare Stadium too.
Correct.
So I mean, going back to the point of when is there going to be a competitive game at Sanford Stadium? I have no idea.
Was it 2016 that Auburn didn't have a first down in the second half?
Probably Sean White back there calling this as a signal caller there. That 2016 team could have been. We're getting off on a little tangent here, but this 2016 team at Auburn, they could have been pretty good if they would have had a solid. They were a few key pieces away. Quarterback play kind of struggled. Sean White was serviceable, but obviously you see what happened in 17 when Stidham moved over. But
yeah, I feel like that's been the story of Auburn football ever since 2013. Is a few pieces away,
yeah,
or a lot of pieces away,
yeah.
at a lot of different areas.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think that 2022 football. Who do you think would win? 2012 Auburn or 2022 Auburn?
22.
You think so?
2012 was horrible.
Could Gene Chizik outcoach Brian Harsin?
You'd have to think he does have a national.
He's got to. He's got to be able to.
You'd have to think.
I think that 2012 Auburn led by Gene Chizik would beat 2022 Auburn led by Brian Harsin. I think so.
It's a bold statement.
I have a feeling that. What are the odds that at the end of this season we're talking about 2024 Auburn as the best 4-win team ever?
That's very possible.
It is.
Yes.
It is. So let's get into score predictions. I'm going UGA. I think Auburn's defense is going to hold strong for as long as it can, but I think it will get worn down over time. I think Georgia wins this game 34-13,
Yeah.
which that would just Auburn would just barely cover if that was the final score, because the line as of Thursday night is 22.5.
Yeah. I'm going to go 42-17 Georgia's way. I don't
Okay,
think
that's 25 points. Okay.
like I said, the secondary, I think Georgia's going to exploit Auburn's secondary. So,
So you think Georgia covers?
yeah.
Okay. We're in a similar ballpark. I've got a 21-point loss. You've got a 25-point loss. I just think the defense plays slightly better. It's basically where we're at.
Yep.
Cool. Yeah. Well, I could see that happening for sure.
Yeah.
And last thing, how much money would you be able to confidently put down on Auburn winning this game?
25 cents.
25. I was going to go a dime.
I'll be generous.
All right, fair enough. Why don't you tell everyone where they can support you and what you've got going on?
Yeah, you can find all my written work with 1819 News and also the Auburn Plainsman. And just go give me a follow on Twitter, X at Logan F. Fowler.
Perfect. You can follow me on Instagram yeah, why not? At the Daniel Locke. You can follow me on Twitter at Daniel J. Locke. You can find my written work for Auburn Tigers on SI.com. And Saturday morning, we're going to do a little bit of a Q&A as we drive over to Athens. I haven't even told Logan about that yet, but we're doing it. So lock in. It'll be fun. And yeah, that's about it. Thank you for tuning in to the Live from the Plains podcast, and we will have a reaction show for you on Sunday. Have a safe weekend, whatever you're doing. And once again, thank you for listening, and we look forward to speaking with you again soon.